Welcome to Champion Crash Course, featuring Illaoi, the Kraken Priestess.
Learn!
Illaoi is a tanky bruiser who specialises in bullying her lane opponent and providing a moderately threatening frontline for her team. Her abilities all scale very well with attack damage, but it shouldn't really be the main focus when building her, especially considering she'll deal very good damage without any AD whatsoever. But it never hurts to have some. Illaoi is best suited to be played in the top lane, however I like to play her mid, and I have found some success with her as support. Jungle is okay, but I wouldn't really recommend it because she's not very effective. She uses mana like most other champions in the game, and she has fairly low costs on her abilities. However, you will be using all of them very frequently to get the most out of her, so mana and mana regen might have to be a consideration. Illaoi was very popular upon her release, however she has dropped off in popularity very quickly, which kind of surprises me. She did have a little bit of a popularity spike recently, but I think that might have been me, or the LCS, I'm not exactly sure. Even though in the LCS she didn't really see too much success due to everyone being absolutely awful at playing her. Thankfully though, once you've watched this guide, you will no doubt be better than every LCS pro who has ever played Illaoi. Maybe. Illaoi's difficulty is listed as a 4, which to me is somewhat debatable. On the one hand, she is a tanky fighter, so most of the time you'll just be taking damage and being an all-round nuisance to the enemy team. However, given her moveset, I'd like to put her at more around a 6 or so. Her abilities aren't always easy to hit and they are very telegraphed. That being said, if you are good with skill shots, positioning, and have very good decision making, I can see why to those players she would be a 4. For summoner spells, I would suggest you go with probably teleport and flash. However, if you are going to go for kills, then consider taking ignite. Exhaust and flash is my personal recommendation, since when you dive into the enemy team, you can essentially nullify one person for a few seconds, which can make team fighting a lot easier. For runes and masteries, it's a little bit of a toss-up. I found success with armor pen marks, armor seals, magic resist glyphs, and health or max health percentage quints. Max health percentage quints are pretty damn useful if you decide to go with what I build, but of course do feel free to experiment with your own runes and masteries since everyone plays it differently. I just like to mention real quick that full AD Illaoi is a thing, and it really hurts. It's best to just find the balance between AD and tank and see which one you prefer. For the masteries, I go 0, 12, 18, focusing mainly on health and health regen. Strength of the Ages is a very good keystone to have because of the max health increase over time. However, if you are wanting to fight more often, then maybe consider Grasp of the Undying. Funnily enough though, Deathfire Touch and Thunderlords can work very nicely on Illaoi, especially considering she is a huge lane bully. But once again, do feel free to tweak and change things to your liking. Maybe you want to go full AD and stomp some faces, or perhaps you want to go full on tank. It's all down to you in the end, but realistically, Illaoi can be played pretty much any way you want and still have success, so don't worry about it too much. For the champions that Illaoi works well with, I would suggest champions who can go all in and cause a lot of havoc in a very short period of time. So champions such as Kha'Zix, Echo, Malphite, Sion, Zyra, and maybe even some assassins like Zed or Talon. For champions who Illaoi will perform well against in lane, I'd say mostly champions with low mobility. Top lane tends to be a bit of a wet noodle fight for the most part, so generally it's kind of even up there, but like I mentioned earlier, I like to play her mid, wherein she can cause a lot of problems for her opponent. So champions such as Riven, Garen, Wukong, Victor, and Orianna. However, with a decent team behind you, it doesn't really matter what you're matched up against, since Illaoi has one ability which if you land it, your team can do the rest, and no matter who you're against, they will always have a difficult time. Just remember though, if you are really far behind, you have to land that ability to be useful. For champions who Illaoi struggles against, I'd say people like Lulu due to her hard CC, Nasus due to his armor shred and wither, Vayne because she pretty much counters everyone, but mostly due to her condemn and silver bolts. And for my final example, I'll say Olaf, because he'll just poke you down with his axe and then rush into you and become immune to all CC, which can prove quite tricky indeed. You've got to remember though, just because you may be playing a counter or you may be playing against your counter in lane, it doesn't mean that you are guaranteed a win or a loss just because of the champions picked. Outplays always happen, people make mistakes, all you can do is try your best. So let's move on to her abilities, shall we? Now, since Rito Gams changes League of Legends and tweaks things constantly, I've written 3 iterations of this guide. That's right, notepad, get on my level, seriously. So the likelihood is I will explain Illaoi in very, very intricate detail, and then the next week she'll be a bloody marksman or some bollocks like that. So let's just try and explain this simplistically. Illaoi's passive is Prophet of an Elder God. When Illaoi is near to a wall, her idol will spawn in a tentacle that can be commanded to attack with her other abilities. The tentacles will last for as long as Illaoi is near them, however if she moves away from them they will become inactive. Tentacles can be killed in 2 hits, however once they are inactive they only take 1 hit to die. Also, if Illaoi remains out of range of the inactive tentacle for 1 minute, it will despawn. Now the tentacles have a static cooldown that are not affected by any form of cooldown reduction, however every 2 levels that Illaoi gains the tentacle cooldown is reduced by 1 second. So at this point in time it starts out at 20 seconds and it eventually will go down to 12 seconds. Hopefully. Illaoi's Q is Tentacle Smash. Passively, this ability gives her tentacles bonus damage, which scales with a percentage of her attack damage. Also, any tentacle that hits an enemy champion will heal Illaoi for a portion of her missing health. Actively, Illaoi slams her idol into the ground and spawns a tentacle that will go forward and slam into the target direction. This will deal a considerable amount of damage to every enemy unit that is hit. You should always take this ability first and you should max it first, because having a point in this will increase the damage of not only your Q itself, but every other tentacle that spawns in, which of course is very important. Illaoi's W is Harsh Lesson. Once activated, Illaoi will gain bonus attack range for 1 attack and will leap to the target enemy unit. Additionally, this will reset Illaoi's auto attack timer. Additionally to the additional, the target who is hit by Illaoi's W will also be attacked by any nearby tentacles. You should take this at level 3 and max it last. The damage part of this isn't important, it's the fact that it commands tentacles. That is the key point here. Illaoi's E is Test of Spirit. Illaoi sends out a tendril. Upon contact with an enemy champion, it will drag their spirit to Illaoi's location. Once the spirit reaches Illaoi's location, any nearby tentacles will attack the spirit, but only once. The spirit has the same health as the targeted enemy. Attacking this will deal a portion of the damage back to the target. If the targeted enemy walks out of the range of the spirit or the spirit is killed, then the target becomes a vessel. Once the target becomes a vessel, they are heavily slowed for a short period of time. Whenever someone becomes a vessel, they will spawn in a tentacle near to them, and once it spawns in, it will go to attack them. And this is the reason why you max your Q first. The curse will eventually run out, but by having more points in your E, you can increase the amount of damage that is dealt back to the initial target when you attack the spirit. Now this ability is absolutely amazing if you can land it consistently, basically due to its pretty much free harass. Now if you are capable of landing it, then I would highly suggest that you max this second. Just a quick fact about this ability though, this ability cannot target minions and monsters, it can only target champions. So keep that in mind, people will stay behind their minions. Illaoi's ultimate is Leap of Faith. Illaoi leaps into the air and then slams her idol into the ground, dealing physical damage and spawning in untargetable tentacles around her. The number of tentacles that spawn in is dependent on how many enemies you hit with the ultimate. Once you cast her ultimate, her W will be on a constant 2-second cooldown for the duration of the ultimate. Now of course this allows for more tentacle slams in a short period of time, as well as being healed a lot by the amount of people getting hit by tentacles. Now this ability is absolutely perfect for team fights. However, it can be used against 1 or 2 enemies for a quick burst of damage. Obviously having more people in the ultimate is the ideal situation, but having 5 people in your ultimate isn't always going to happen, especially considering Illaoi has no way of getting in close in a very short period of time. So you just want to use this when the best opportunity arises, or when you're about to die so you can get a bit of health back. Builds! Alright, so I'm just going to give you my build real quick. Boom! Booties, Merc Treads. Nobody likes not being able to move. I mean, come on, seriously. Warmogs, for regenerating all of your health and then going back in. Spirit Visage, more health regen, good cooldown reduction. Magic Resist, perfect. Sterax Gauge, when you're in a team fight, the passive pops, you get massive, deal uber damage. It's amazing, trust. Triforce or Frozen Fist, depending on how much you're carrying. Sheen procs are absolutely great because of Illaoi's low cooldown spells and her W applies on-hit effects, so it's absolutely great. Finally we have Tear of the Goddess. Now I say finally, but I always build this item first. Then again, I build a tear on everyone. Now it may sound a bit weird, I know, but trust me. Having loads of mana is perfect if you're like me and you like to use your abilities a lot. Illaoi's strength isn't just in her ability to fight in short bursts. Using her E and landing it as often as you can make team fights so much easier. Having all those vessels around and having people on really low health essentially for free is absolutely amazing. But you see, once you're out of mana, you're basically worthless since you're not going to be auto-attacking a lot and you're not a full tank. Now obviously you want to turn that into the Miura mana whenever you can for that insane damage spike. Trust me, when you hit someone with your W with a Sheen proc and a Miura mana passive, oh my god, they basically almost die right then and there. I'd just like to mention that sometimes I will build a Black Cleaver instead of a Sheen item, but once again, it's all situational. However, the tear, that is not situational. Always buy a tear. Or don't, I mean, yeah. So admittedly, not everyone is going to build like me, so here are some alternative items to build. Frozen Mallet, Black Cleaver, Titanic Hydra, Randuin's Omen, Frozen Heart, or more of Malmortius. All of these items work perfectly well on Illaoi, so feel free to build any mixture of them, change it up now and then, just see what works. The build I go with pretty much always works because it's a nice mixture between everything. However, just because it works for me doesn't mean that it's going to work for you, so once again, do feel free to experiment and try new things. Also, if you have any other items to recommend, then do feel free to share them in the comments, along with some other tips and tricks of course. Right, so, playing as Illaoi. Early game. So if you're going to be following my Mongoloid style, then you'll probably want to buy a Sapphire Crystal and a Fairy Charm to start the game. Also, don't forget the Warding Totem. However, if you are playing like a smart person, then you'll probably want to start with either a Doran Shield or that refill potion and some anal beads. And then of course make your way to your chosen lane, or go and help your jungler, either way. Once you get into your lane, you'll want to set up some tentacles on some anchor points. Illaoi can have tentacles on pretty much every wall, however you can't control where they go. And also they can't be too close to each other. I believe they have to be about 6 Teemos apart. So in the mid lane there are about 5 to 7 really good anchor points, but at this point in the game you'll only be able to utilise 3 of them. Top lane does technically have more anchor points due to the big wall on the back, so realistically you can have more tentacles up there. However, they are very spaced apart, so realistically you're only going to get 1, maybe 2 tentacles if you're lucky to attack the same target. However, in mid lane you can have 4 tentacles that are very close, so you're always going to get 2 or maybe 3 tentacles to attack that same target. And also, once you get ganked, if you fight in the middle of the lane, you can potentially get 6 tentacles or more to attack 1 target. Seriously, that is amazing, and that is why I suggest you play her mid lane. Trust me on this one. So, in the early game, you want to set up some tentacles in the little area here, sort of like a V shape. One will be on the tower, and the other 2 tentacles will be on the side of the lane. At this point in time, you'll probably only have 2 tentacles spawned in, but the 3rd one will spawn in eventually, so don't worry about it. And also, don't worry about it if your tentacle does decide to choose the raptor wall. That tentacle is still perfectly fine. So to start the game, you'll just want to use your Q to poke down your enemy laner and try and lower the health of all the minions. You see, early on, dealing damage isn't your priority. The priority should be to hit level 3 as fast as you can so you can perform your devastating combo, which of course would be to E your enemy, pull the spirit towards you, preferably under your tower so that the tower focuses it as well, press your W, hit the spirit so the tentacles will attack for a 2nd time, and this will almost guarantee that your enemy laner goes down below half health. And of course they become a vessel, which might make for some easy damage, or maybe they'll just run away. You never know. Now whenever possible, you just want to repeat this step over and over again. Annoy the living shit out of your enemy laner. Now it's entirely possible to keep landing your E and just panic the enemy into fighting you, or just running away every time you do it. Remember though that once your E is leveled up, the return damage will be much higher. So early on you might not think that it's helping very much since it's doing very little damage, but just you wait. Mid-game. Illaoi isn't really known for her ganks because she really does rely quite a lot on her E and having tentacles nearby, so her full effectiveness isn't really shown out of lane. However, Illaoi does have very good invading and jungle skirmish capabilities. This is due to the close quarters combat, so more tentacles will hit more people at once, so perhaps invading the enemy jungler or looking for jungle fights could be a consideration. Now this is all just assuming that your enemy laner isn't just sat in the lane with you. In which case, if they are just sat in lane with you, your task is to tilt them off the face of the mountain. What you've got to do is just put so much pressure on your lane so that that enemy laner will always come back to defend it, and you might draw the jungler's attention as well. Try not to worry about 2v1s or 3v1s, you can turn the tide very quickly. I will show you how later on, don't worry. But if the enemy laner does decide to just leave, then you can just push down the lane for free. Illaoi has very good clearing with her Q and W combo, and she can push the towers using her W auto attack reset. So either way, the enemy is going to lose. They're going to bring people towards you to try and kill you. Your other laners are going to have an easier time. Either that or the enemies are going to leave and you're just going to get the entire lane. Now, I don't want to hype up Illaoi too much because she can be killed, of course, any champion can. So don't just think that Illaoi is some sort of invincible goddess that can survive every encounter she ever gets into, but she can survive most of them. So just try and draw as much pressure as you can and take the weight off your team. Okay, so let me give you a pro tip from me to you. Right, so before you pop your ultimate against anyone, always land your E. Funnily enough, the spirit of the person is classed as another enemy champion. So whenever you press your ultimate, that spirit is classed as another enemy champion being there, which will add another tentacle, which means more damage, more healing, amazing. So having that spirit there will of course have that extra tentacle there, which will deal more damage to the spirit, which in turn may make a vessel of the guy you originally pulled with your E. Now, because you used your ultimate, you now have those untargetable tentacles, and you may also have a vessel. So now you have a lowered cooldown on your W, which means they're spawning in tentacles around them, and you can command them with your W. So they'll pop out the ground, try and slam the guy, you'll W the guy, they'll slam again, and the untargetable ones will also slam against the guy. There are so many freaking tentacles, it's unreal. So yeah, remember to E, because the E is classed as another enemy champion. Whew. Right, that's a lot to take in, I'm sure, but you'll get the hang of that very quickly. Just remember, press E, make sure to land it. If you don't panic. But if you do, woo, you know? Right, so, late game. Now is the time to be looking for openings to land that E. Once you land it, make sure your team are on the same page. Basically put, hit the damn spirit, okay? Too many people leave the spirit alone because it just doesn't do any damage. Then what's that? Oh my god, some people just infuriate me. One good test of spirit on a guy with a maxed out E and a handful of AD will put that target on 1/4 of their health. Probably lower. And also, it spawns in tentacles around them. That isn't just for the vessel themselves. That tentacle could also hit their teammates. Now, if you wanted to, you could just do this to every enemy on the team and just get them insanely low every time. But just make sure that you have enough tentacles around to hit the spirit to deal damage back, and make sure that your team are also focusing the spirit. Because sometimes if you pull a tank or a guy who can just escape, it can be a bit tricky to get that ability to work properly. But if you can make the enemy fear you and that ability, all is well. Now sometimes when you land an E, or maybe even miss an E, the enemy will want to try and engage on you because you don't have that ability anymore. Well, that's the perfect time to press your ultimate, is it not? So there you go, that's how you team fight. Pretty much done right there. They come in on you, or you go in on them, whatever happens first. You press your ultimate, make sure you land your E beforehand. If you don't though, like I say, not to worry, it's still great. And just keep bouncing around on the targets. Doesn't really matter who you hit because the tentacles are going to be slamming everywhere. Use your W, use your Q, try and get your E off. Absolutely amazing. It's all burst damage, all in one go. Absolutely amazing. So yeah, that is how you play as Illaoi. You throw your E out, hopefully you land it, you pull it back, yourself and your team kill the spirit then goes back to the champion, causes them to be a vessel, they're on about 1/4 of their health, the tentacles start slamming everywhere, it's amazing, and then you try again in the next few seconds, and then hopefully you make another vessel, and the other vessel will start spawning in more tentacles around them, and then they will be on 1/4 of their health, even the tank, potentially. And then if you want to, you can chase them down and go in. Absolutely amazing. Now, because this is Champion Crash Course, I'm going to teach you how to beat Illaoi. This isn't just how to play her, this is also how to play against her. Now, as we know, Illaoi is a massive bully, but she can be poked down very easily, so consider champions who have long-range abilities such as Nidalee or Xerath, or have very good long-range basic attacks, Caitlyn, Ashe, Jinx. On that same note, Illaoi is very kiteable. Once her E is down, she basically can't do anything, so go in, try and kite her out, deal as much damage as you can, stun her, slow her, do whatever is possible. Obviously, like I've mentioned, you want to try and avoid Illaoi's E. If you've ever played the tutorial, you will know to stay behind your minions. Just remember though, don't stay too close to the minions because that is a very good opportunity for the Illaoi to land her Q on you, and also maybe get some minions in the process. If Illaoi does land her E and you are not in a position to fight, then your best option is to just run away and let yourself become a vessel. In the early game, this won't spawn in many tentacles, so just move from side to side, and remember to kill them when you get the chance. Because Illaoi's tentacles will heal her for a portion of her missing health, whenever she's on low health and she lands a Q or her tentacles hit someone, she will gain a lot of health back very quickly. So keeping that in mind, Ignite or any other form of healing reduction is very strong against Illaoi. Most Illaois that you come up against won't be like me, and they won't build a tier, so eventually they will run out of mana. So just like with most mana users, now is your time to strike, because she can't E you, she can't turn you into a vessel, she can't ult, she can't command her tentacles to attack, and she can't even use her Q to heal herself. Perfect. Alright, so I've thought of another one, and this one works both for when you're playing as Illaoi and when you're playing against Illaoi. So once you do actually land your E, yes, I know this is all about landing your E, but the E is seriously a really good ability, so trust me. Whenever Illaoi lands her E and the spirit is pulled towards her, every attack on Illaoi will decrease the time the spirit is out by 1 second. So if you'd like to go in and then hit her as many times as you can, then the likelihood is you won't become a vessel. So try and remember that when you're both playing as Illaoi and playing against Illaoi. So that's about all I can think of when you're playing against her. If you have any other tips, then please don't hesitate to let me know. I like to play Illaoi a lot, so it might be nice to know some things that counteract her playstyle so I can try and avoid them when I'm playing as her. That, and of course, I'm sure lots of other people would appreciate the tips, so if you are going to leave a comment that's helping people, thank you. Alright, so let's move on to the tips and tricks. Now, to be honest, there aren't too many tips and tricks that I can think of with Illaoi. She's actually a quite simplistic champion in the grand scheme of things, but I'll just try and list off a few things that I feel might be somewhat necessary. So once again, the spirit is classed as an enemy champion, and therefore will grant you another tentacle in your ult. I need to hammer this home because I have won so many bad fights just by having that extra damage and extra healing on my side. And whenever I see people play Illaoi, they never use this trick. So please guys, if you are going to play Illaoi, use this trick, it is fantastic. Also, I'd like to mention real quick that because the spirit is classed as an enemy champion, it can be exhausted, it can be ignited, all those status effects can be applied to the spirit. However, as of right now, I don't believe that those status effects are applied back to the initial target, so try not to use those things on a spirit. Now this is a pretty fun one. Illaoi's W can be used to jump over some small walls, which can be useful when you're trying to escape, but more often than not you won't be using that too much. Also, it's a bit weird sometimes where Illaoi might sort of kinda teleport over stuff when she jumps. I don't know why that happens. Illaoi is a glitchy mess at times. Now, whilst the tentacles themselves don't grant you any vision, you can always see the health bar of the tentacle no matter where you are on the map. Now, people are very likely to kill your tentacles whenever they see them, so this is a great way to get some free information on the whereabouts of your opponents. I'd also like to mention that tentacles are worth 5 gold. The tentacles are pretty core to Illaoi's kit, so you generally want to keep them up as long as you can. Like with a lot of champions in League of Legends, if you hover over the abilities on the hotbar, you can actually see the scaling of her abilities and a lot of detailed information. So this can be very useful if you forget some details or you just want to have some precise information on hand at that moment in time. It can also be useful for when they eventually decide to change Illaoi again and her abilities are all different, so you can just hover over and see what they do. Woo. And finally, this impacts gameplay in absolutely no way whatsoever, but sometimes you just have to enjoy yourself every now and then. If you have any tentacles that are spawned in nearby and you dance, the tentacles will dance with you. How nice is that? Now this is just a quick personal side note, but Illaoi only has 2 skins as of right now, and I'm not one for skins, but to be honest, Illaoi is all about teaching people and having them learn things. So perhaps having Headmistress Illaoi could be a good idea? You know, actually, I don't think that'd be a good idea. I don't think I'd be able to concentrate very well, do you? So there we have it. That is Illaoi for you. Quite a simple champion who can provide a lot of things for a team as long as you know how to use them. All of her abilities synergize perfectly well together, and she is a great lane bully. Also, don't worry about falling behind too much on Illaoi, since your E can basically swing the fights no matter where you are in the game. Having an opponent on less than half health just because you landed your E and your team did the rest of the damage on the spirit is always a great feeling. Just remember to keep on practicing and trying out different builds, you know, runes and masteries, playing her in different roles, all that guff. Illaoi was designed for the top lane, but like I say, play her mid, give that a try, it's very, very good. She can also be played as a support, but I would suggest you do that with a pre-made bot lane because the tentacles can steal minions very easily, and we all know how those marksmen get when you take their farm. But of course you will be building a relic shield, so oftentimes it's not as bad. Once again though, I'd just like to point out why I play her mid, since I get a lot of questions whenever I do play her mid. My lane opponent always asks me questions of why are you doing this, the jungler's always confused, why are you playing this? I play her mid because of the close proximity of the tentacles. There are lots more opportunities to land the double tentacle slam, more damage, more healing. Of course, that's what we want. In top lane, the lane has a curvature to it, which means the tentacles often won't hit the same target, which is very unfortunate. Now, of course, if you do have any other helpful information, tips, tricks, all that guff for both me and other people that would like to learn, then do feel free to share it in the comments. Me being an Illaoi main, I'm always looking for some new ways to crush faces and maybe learn how to actually play against Illaoi a little bit more effectively. I would appreciate that personally, and I'm sure that people who want to learn Illaoi will also appreciate that a great deal. So thank you very much if you do give us any tips. I mean, after all, Illaoi is all about teaching people and learning lessons, so it's much appreciated. So there we go, one of my favourite champions, Illaoi, the Kraken Priestess. Hopefully you've learned something. I hope maybe I've inspired you to play Illaoi. The first few games might be a bit rough, understandably, but once you get into the swing of things, I can promise you that Illaoi is great fun to play, especially when people don't know how to play against her. So there we go then, thank you very much for watching, I hope you've learned something, hope to see you on the Rift, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.